Hello there. Welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm JD Licciardello.
This week, the Kamala-mentum builds as Biden explains his reasons for ending his campaign and Trump struggles to find a new playbook.
Our guest, independent presidential candidate Cornel West. What does he think of Kamala Harris? But first...
It's been a whirlwind first week as the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee for Vice President Kamala Harris. She hit the campaign trail in battleground Wisconsin with a rally in Milwaukee drawing a bigger crowd than Biden has managed all year.
We have doors to knock on, we have phone calls to make, we have voters to register, and we have an election to win.
And Harris secured the prized public endorsement of Barack and Michelle Obama.
I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
With just about a week until a party deadline for the ticket to be finalised, the search is on for a running mate for Kamala Harris.
Vice President Harris has winnowed the list to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, and Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona as the top contenders.
But then Roy Cooper took himself out of consideration, reportedly leaving the shortest of shortlists, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro.
The vice president has a deeply personal decision to make as to who she wants to run with, who she wants to govern with.
And astronaut turned Arizona Senator Mark Kelly.
This is not about me, but I've always when I've had, the chance to serve, I think that's very important to do.
For now, the Democratic wave of enthusiasm is showing no signs of breaking, and the Harris for President campaign has seen money and volunteers pouring in $200 million in a week, more than Biden made in the first quarter of the year. 2/3 of that money coming from first-time donors as well. And Harris is trying now to goad Trump into a series of debates after he cancelled the one agreed to with Biden in September. Here's what Harris had to say at a rally in Atlanta, Georgia earlier today.
I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say, say it to my face.
Kamala Harris maintains she's the underdog, but says that she also has momentum, and there is evidence to back that claim up.
New polls show Vice President Harris tightening the race with former President Trump.
2 weeks ago, Trump was leading Biden by 6 points in national polls from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal and CNN. This week, he leads Harris by 1 in the Times, 2 in the Journal and 3 points in the CNN poll. And in the 3 Rust Belt swing states, some polls are now showing a statistical dead heat.
Look at this. Wisconsin is the one that had the biggest separation between the two of them in Fox News polling this week, and it's just +1 Trump, well within the margin of error. Michigan a tie. Pennsylvania, of course, a key state. That is tied right now.
And if Harris wins all 3 of those, plus the single electoral vote from Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, that's the election won. But Harris also does seem a little bit more competitive than Biden was, certainly in the Sun Belt from the south through to the west. So there could be another potential path for her, maybe.
Quite possibly, although she's still not nudging in front yet, isn't she? Even though she's having her honeymoon, quite not there. Trump would be sweating, though, because the race is changing. Not only did Harris raise all that money you referred to before, but there's also been 170,000 volunteers signing up in 1 week. And while all this drama's been going on, people haven't even noticed that the economy grew at a surprisingly strong annualised rate of 2.8% in the last quarter, while prices actually fell slightly in the past month. Deflation, not inflation. And America also set an all-time record for factory investment as a percentage of GDP. More than twice as much manufacturing investment than there was under Trump.
So things are looking up. Meanwhile, former President Trump has been trying out new lines of attack against his new rival, like this at a rally in North Carolina.
If Kamala Harris gets in, she would be the most radical far-left extremist ever to occupy the White House ×10. There's never been a lunatic like this in the White House, and we've had some bad ones.
Yes, indeed we have. And suddenly, in Trump's telling, Joe Biden wasn't so bad after all.
So now they bring in this one who's worse than him. She's worse than him. because he's a fake liberal. You know, he wasn't that liberal. He was fake. She's a real liberal. She really is a real liberal. She's much worse than him.
It does not take long to reevaluate Biden, does it? In particular, the area they're attacking Harris on is her handling of immigration, when she was supposedly the border czar.
Since being appointed by border czar by President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris has undoubtedly been a complete failure in her job and has destroyed our country by releasing a record-setting levels of criminals, rapists, and terrorists into our communities.
Now, I mentioned last week that Republicans have been calling Harris the border czar, even though, as Axios puts it, she never had the title. The only problem is, back in 2021, Axios then said that Biden did appoint her as a border czar. Equally, USA Today now notes that Harris's border work was on the root causes of migration. She wasn't in charge. But back in 2021, USA Today said Harris was leading the White House efforts to stem migration at the border. So which is it? Was Harris only focusing on the root causes of migration in Central America, or was she responsible for the administration's whole response to migration issues? Well, this is what Biden said at the time.
I asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
And also at the time, his national security advisor said President Biden has asked Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the administration's work on our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle. So that does seem quite clear. Harris was trying to address the root causes of migration from Mexico and Central America, but the media misreported it. And you could tell that Harris knew she was being stitched up, because when the press asked her whether she'd go to the border like she was a border czar, she said this.
The president has asked Secretary Mayorkas to address what is going on at the border, and he has been working very hard at that and is showing some progress because of his hard work. I have been asked to lead the issue of dealing with root causes in the Northern Triangle, similar to what then Vice President did many years ago.
Nice try, Kamala, but the media completely ignored her, and the White House didn't seem overly concerned to correct them, if I'm being honest. I suppose there is just one last question. If Harris was indeed just focusing on the root causes of migration from Mexico and Central America, well, what effect did her work have on the interception numbers from Central America and Mexico? Well, here you go. These are just the numbers from Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, and they have gone down, I guess, eventually. So I suppose Harris has earned herself a nice, solid meh. Of course, John, this is just one of many knocks on Kamala Harris over the last few years, and her chronic approval issues are the subject of a new segment that we're starting today, which looks at some of the burning questions in American politics.
Yes, indeed. It is called The Briefing Room, and here to brief us is Melina Wicks.
Kamala Harris is bad. At least that's what I keep hearing.
Ms. Harris has a communication problem. She has an authenticity problem. She has a likability problem.
Kamala makes even Joe Biden look eloquent, which at this point is really saying something.
I don't understand what's going on. Is it that she has a speechwriter who hates her?
And it's not just pundits. Her polling is really bad. Like Joe Biden bad. But why is she so unpopular? As the backup to America's oldest president, Harris has gotten a lot more scrutiny than the average Veep. Critics like to describe her speech style as word salad, which is not as healthy as it sounds. It's more like this kind of thing.
You know, every election cycle we talk about this is the most election of our lifetime.
Not great. She can also get a bit repetitive.
What can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been. What can be, unburdened by what has been.
That montage goes for 4 minutes. If the American public liked her as much as she likes that phrase, she'd already be president. People even slammed her for her cringe dance moves. Shocking. As we all know, the only acceptable presidential dance move is this. Plus, if you let Trump's choice of nickname be your guide, the thing that's really so bad about Kamala is her laugh.
Laughing Kamala, L-A-F-F-I-N apostrophe. Laughing.
Though to be fair, Trump seems to have a problem with laughing in general.
Are you having a good time?
Good time.
All right, well, tell your face.
The Biden administration didn't exactly set Harris up for success either. Officially, vice presidents are mostly just a backup, so they tend to get saddled with the kinds of thankless, unsolvable problems the president wants to run a mile from. Just ask Vice President Joe Biden, who got tasked in 2012 with stopping school shootings and increasing gun control. This is the trajectory of school shootings since 2012. But most people have forgotten it was even on his to-do list. Harris, for her part, was tasked with addressing the root causes of illegal migration from Central America. And while it is very plausible that a vice president could solve poverty, crime, and corruption in multiple countries she's not a citizen of, you know it's a long shot when even Fox News thinks it's unfair.
There were theories that Biden's people had it in for her right from the beginning by giving her that unenviable role of border czar.
Presidents don't always want their potential replacement racking up wins. Nobody wants to help the understudy get the part. Back in 2008, Obama chose Biden assuming he'd be too old to run in 2016. So Obama wouldn't have to worry about competing political ambitions in the White House, a notion that's aged even more poorly than Biden. But now that Biden is finally definitely too old to run for president, the move has been on to rehab Harris's image, with pro-Kamala TV pundits and opinion pieces sprouting like very desperate mushrooms. Some of them argue that as a woman of color, she's been unfairly attacked, or that as a former prosecutor, she can take on a legally challenged Trump. But mostly people are arguing that literally anyone would do better than Biden. So is Kamala Harris as bad as people say? Conservative news has an incentive to make her look bad because they don't want a viable Joe Biden replacement. And the Biden administration had an incentive to not help her look good because they didn't want a viable Joe Biden replacement either. Then again, everyone telling us she's great now has an incentive to do that because it turned out that Biden really needed replacing. One thing's for sure, if Harris is ever going to be president, she needs to be
unburdened by what has been, you know?
President Biden was back at the White House this week after recovering from COVID and gave just his fourth Oval Office address to explain his reasons for ending his re-election campaign, despite maintaining his record deserved a second term.
You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. But there's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now.
Biden also travelled to the Lyndon Johnson Presidential Library in Austin, Texas yesterday for an event marking the 60th anniversary of the landmark Civil Rights Act, and he received there a lengthy standing ovation. And Biden used the occasion to criticise the current US Supreme Court and warn of Republican plans to strip away civil rights under the conservative blueprint known as Project 2025.
Project 2025 calls aggressively attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion across all aspects of American life. This extreme MAGA movement even proposes to end birth rate citizenship.
Biden also proposed a constitutional amendment to limit presidential immunity, and he wants to impose ethics standards and term limits on justices, all of which stands next to no chance of ever passing Congress, of course. Now, with non-compulsory voting in the United States, it is very hard to gauge the potential impact of third-party candidates. Are they taking votes away from the major two parties, or are they attracting support from people who would otherwise just stay at home? If left-wing independent candidate Cornel West does take some Democratic votes in a close election this November, some argue that he could hand Donald Trump the keys to the White House again. So, do the recent changes to the Democratic ticket change his mind about running for president? Cornel West is with us now. Dr. West, welcome back to Planet America.
Thank you all so much.
The political reality is that after November the 5th, either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris will be about to become the next president of the United States. I wonder, do you feel as though your campaign will have any impact on the outcome of that election?
Well, we shall see. You know, it's hard to say. Things are changing so very, very quickly. As you recall, 14 months ago, it was unclear, you know, where everybody thought it would be just Biden and Trump. And I said, well, Trump could end up in jail. And as you know, Biden could do an LBJ moment and pull out. It's hard to say where things will be really in the next 3 months. And in that regard, I'm going to the end of the election with the same vision, the same project, and the same policies.
Dr. West, how many states are you definitely on the ballot for right now, if I could ask? And how many states do you expect to be on the ballot for at the end of this process?
I'm on about 7 states just based on minor parties willing to put me on their ballot, which gives me access to statewide voting. Then on another 6 that we've been able to do on our own, and we're building on actually another 15 or so in the next few weeks, because there's some low-hanging fruit. States like Louisiana and Tennessee, it's just a matter of money and very, very few signatures. So that we are very much on the move. We should be on, I hope, about 30 or 35 or so. And you see the other states we can have right in.
And Cornel West, is there a conversation to be had with you and the Democrats around particular policy concerns of yours that could ultimately see you potentially supporting Kamala Harris's presidential campaign?
Well, I mean, I'm open to dialogue. I've got a Socratic sensibility across the board. I don't mind talking to anybody, but I try to hold on to my integrity, honesty, and decency. And I would never be willing to support a candidate who enables genocide. That's just bottom line. There's no way that I could proceed in that regard. And the same would be true in terms of issues like poverty and what have you. So that I would open the dialogue. There's no doubt about that, but I would never, at this point, jump on a bandwagon that somehow would lead me to accommodate myself to something like the genocide in Gaza. Now, let's keep in mind that, we got 80 million fellow citizens who don't vote at all. It's roughly about 40% of Americans do not vote at all. And I know that's alien for Australians, but it's real in the USA. And I target both those fellow citizens, but also those citizens who would never, ever, ever vote for either Democrats or Republicans.
Now, we've seen an assassination attempt in this race already. Are you concerned about your safety at all? And has your security situation changed since Trump was shot?
Brother, as a Jesus-loving free black man in America telling the truth about the vicious legacy of white supremacy and predatory capitalist processes, I've been living under the threat of death for many, many decades. So it's not new. I did request Secret Service protection based on my volunteers and others who asked me to do so. We haven't heard it all. I'm not holding my breath. I also requested for Brother RFK Jr., even though his views on the Palestinians that's disgusting and appalling. But I pushed for him because I thought he actually should definitely have Secret Service protection, and we failed up until recently. Thank God, just a couple of weeks ago, he got that. I still do not have it. But it just goes with the territory, though, brother. You know what I mean? It goes with the territory, though, man. You try to bear witness, be a witness, keep the love in your soul, tell the truth, keep your smile and with your style, and see what happens.
Given your decades of work on civil rights, racial justice, is there anything about Kamala Harris's historic candidacy in and of itself that would be enough for you to want to support her?
Well, let me say this, though. I mean, anytime I see black folk coming out of my own churches and communities and so on with tremendous joy overflowing, it puts a smile on my face because it's a symbolic hit at white supremacy, in this case, male supremacy as well. But when I look at what the moral content and the ethical substance and the political direction of that black joy, which is to say, when I look at Sister Harris's record, when I look at where she's leading the country, when I look at what she stands for, namely her policies, that I still stand in strong opposition to those policies and therefore her. But I had the same opposition to Obama that I had the same opposition to her. Namely, it's another black face in a high place that will continue to facilitate genocide in Gaza, that won't say a mumbling word on poverty, that won't deal with the very deep class inequality and class injustice in the country and hide it and conceal it with skin pigmentation and gender. And so as much as I'm very much an opponent of white supremacy and male supremacy, if you're not getting at the issue of empire and capitalist inequality, then it certainly does not warrant my support.
Cornel West, thank you for joining us on Planet America.
Thank you so very much. You all stay strong now.
Republican Vice Presidential nominee JD Vance is weird, and so is Donald Trump. That is, at least according to just about every Democrat to pop up on cable news and network politics shows this week.
JD Vance is awfully weird.
That is weird behavior.
Weird.
It's quite weird.
It's pretty weird.
It's not just a weird style that he brings.
Some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
Yes, the word of the week is weird. And in the 2 weeks since Vance was announced as Trump's VP pick, he's certainly had a few weird moments.
Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys.
That was weird, according to Democratic Governor of Kentucky and VP wannabe Andy Beshear.
What was weird was him joking about racism today and then talking about Diet Mountain Dew.
Although, speaking of weird, the next day Beshear realised that he might have gone a little bit too far.
I do owe an apology to Diet Mountain Dew.
So much weirdness. Still, some other pretty weird JD Vance clips have been dredged up as well from when he was running for Senate in 2021, like his idea that parents should get extra votes on behalf of their kids.
Let's give votes to all children in this country, but let's give control over those votes to the parents of those children.
And it seems like JD just does not like people who don't have kids but do have power.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too.
JD was asked about those childless cat lady comments this week, and he wasn't backing down.
It's true. It is true that we become anti-family. It is true that the left has become anti-child.
Actor Jennifer Aniston, whose own ultimately unsuccessful struggles to have a child were tabloid fodder for years, took to Instagram to tell her 45 million followers,
I truly can't believe this is coming from a potential VP of the United States. All I can say is, Mr. Vance, I pray that your daughter is fortunate enough to bear children of her own one day. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF as a second option, because you are trying to take that away from her too.
So then it was JD's turn to be outraged.
You have Hollywood celebrities saying, oh, well, JD Vance, what if your daughter suffered fertility problems? Well, first of all, that's disgusting because my daughter is 2 years old. And second of all, if she had fertility problems, as I said in that speech, I would try everything I could to try to help her because I believe families and babies are a good thing.
They say when you're explaining, you're losing. And it was all a little reminiscent of back in 1992 when the then Republican Vice President Dan Quayle criticised Candice Bergen's TV sitcom character Murphy Brown for becoming a single parent.
A character who supposedly epitomizes today's intelligent, highly paid professional woman, mocking the importance of fathers by bearing a child alone and calling it just another lifestyle choice.
That didn't work out well for Dan, but then this week things got even weirder when JD Vance sent out a tweet with the quote, JD Vance is weird, with a link to a clip of then Senator Kamala Harris in 2019.
And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
She, her, and her. Mine too.
All right.
Now, to most people, Kamala Harris clarifying her pronouns was a sign of support for people who identify differently. It's probably weird that JD thinks that that's weird, and Chris Cuomo was being a bit weird. But anyway, this whole weird thing has certainly caught on this week.
You know who's plain weird? She's plain weird. She's a weird person.
Classic Trump. Whatever people say to him, he always says back. Look, to be honest, if someone announced their pronouns at the beginning of a standard presidential town hall, I think that would be unusual. It would certainly be a first. But in this case, it was a special LGBTQ town hall event. So it actually made perfect sense. And JD is taking Harris out of context there. That's also, by the way, why Chris Cuomo was soon apologising for his joke. Not too bright, Chris. Anyway, that was part of an absolute avalanche of response tweets from the online right, all saying JD Vance is weird sarcastically and then tweeting out something about Democrats, often involving LGBTQ people. I think they knew that the Dems were coordinating, and so they were trying to coordinate back. In fact, the Harris campaign itself sent out an email that said Vance was weird. That email was entitled, JD Vance is a creep who wants to ban abortion nationwide. Interestingly though, it seems like Harris has had this attack sitting on the shelf for ages. Apparently back in 2018, when her aides asked Harris what she'd do in a hypothetical town hall style debate with Trump if Trump stalked behind her like he did Hillary Clinton back in 2016, she said she'd turn around and ask him, why are you being so weird? But Harris has definitely had Vance in the gun all week. This was another one of her attacks.
And make no mistake, JD Vance will be loyal only to Trump, not to our country.
This time, though, Vance had a more convincing response.
Kamala Harris questioned my loyalty to this country. That's the word she used, loyalty. And I'd like to ask the Vice President, what has she done to question my loyalty to this country? I served in the United States Marine Corps. I went to Iraq for this country, and my running mate took a bullet for this country. So my question to Kamala Harris is, what the hell have you done to question our loyalty to the United States of America?
That was a good, passionate response from JD, although if I was Vance, I'd tread lightly when playing the military card, given his service was as a military journalist for 4 years. The attacks on Vance are actually a surprisingly complicated issue, which we're going to talk about on Friday. But for now, I want to discuss the less orthodox attacks.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
This week you might have seen some wild speculation that JD Vance may have once had sex with a couch. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. But that's just an online joke, isn't it? Yes, it is. But not just online.
You know, his running mate, as you probably have heard, is, getting known for his obsession with couches.
It seems like the Republicans are getting a big JD Vance, should I say couch-sized wake-up call.
There's an AP story about him and a couch, which is inappropriate even for primetime. I don't even want to discuss it.
If you're going to accuse someone of having sex with a couch, you better have video.
If it's okay by you, Jesse, I'd prefer not to see the video. So how did we get here? It all started with a tweet claiming Vance had admitted to that act in his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. Should have been a red flag, I would have thought, that this sex act had somehow gone unnoticed over the last 8 years, despite it apparently spanning 3 pages of his best-selling book. But then it was pushed along when someone else on the internet supposedly scanned the offending pages, complete with a full description of Vance's rite of passage into the chambers of manhood. The tweeter later admitted to Snopes that they'd fabricated that by editing the raw ebook file of a pirated copy of the book. But by then, it's too late. The internet was awash with JD couch memes, and that's where they might have stayed until the Associated Press decided to fact-check this claim. That then amplified what was an obvious troll and gave it new life as a real-life rumour, especially when they ran the headline, "No, JD Vance did not have sex with a couch." Great work, guys. That made the fact check a meme in itself. It only got worse when the AP then changed their mind and tried to remove the fact check, replacing it with the unhelpfully ambiguous, "Page unavailable. This story did not go through our standard editing process and has been removed." Which of course the internet took as proof that the story was true. And now it's such a mess, I don't even think running a 3-minute segment about it on TV would make it worse. So here we are. And that, John, has cut through more than any of that economic data I mentioned before.
Sure.
In fact, it's cut through more than any other story, I reckon, this week. Welcome to election campaigns in 2024. They're a bunch of malarkey.
So you're saying that he had sex with a couch because he's weird?
No! No!
Sure?
No!
That's it for another trip to Planet America. We'll see you back here at the same time next week or anytime you like on iView, YouTube and Facebook.
And we're going to fireside chat on Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC News. See you there.
Bye.